good?
Good.
Fantastic.
All right, so many of you guys know how the Bible study came to be, but we're really going to get in that tonight. And as we look into the story of Elijah, we're kind of like parallel our story with his. So this is Elijah on Mount Carmel. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him Ahab went to meet Elijah. When he saw Elijah, he said to him, "Is that you, you troublemaker of Israel?" "I have not made trouble of Israel," Elijah replied, "but you and your father's family have. You have abandoned the Lord's commandment and have followed Baals. Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel, and bring me the 450 prophets of Baal and the 450 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table." So Ahab sent word through all Israel and assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel. Elijah went before the people and said, "How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him." But the people said nothing. Then Elijah said to them, "I am the only one of the Lord's prophets left, but Baal has 450 prophets. Get 2 bulls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves, and let them cut it into pieces, and put it on wood, but not set it to fire. Do not set it to fire. I will prepare the other bull and put it on the wood, but not set it to fire. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of my God, and the God who answers by fire, he is God." They all agreed. So basically, he's calling out all these false prophets and all these things because they're worshiping this false God, and he's calling them to Mount Carmel to basically test which God is real. So just like God called Elijah on Mount Carmel, he was calling me to have this Bible study. And a lot of doubt and shame was coming over, like, what if it doesn't work out? And like I had all these what if, because I had a what if spirit. And I really feel like God is calling everybody in this room, every single person, if they feel worthless or not, everybody in this room to do something. I don't know if that's a dream, a vision, a next step towards God, or what it is, but you keep living with a what if spirit. Turn to your neighbor and tell them, talk yourself into it.
Talk yourself into it.
Talk yourself into it.
Talk yourself into it. Don't have a what if spirit. Yeah.
Hey, talk yourself into it.
But talking yourself into it comes with trust. Knowing that even if nothing seems right, you can still trust God with what he is calling you to do. Because it's the days that you don't feel like trusting are the days that you need to trust the most. Because I think even Elijah probably, and he had his doubts, because he told Ahab to get 450 prophets of Baal. So imagine there's 450 prophets of Baal, and then there's Elijah all by himself. And I really, sorry, I gotta stand on.
Okay, I got you. Don't worry about it.
So, and I really like this image because you have the 450 prophets of Baal in one corner, and you have Elijah and God in another. So let me ask you one question. Which corner would you choose? Which one would you choose, to stand with the 450 false prophets or stand with God and Elijah?
Stand with God.
Right, of course. We would all choose to stand with the one true God, then with the 450 false prophets and their false God. I would too. But what if it was a choice between God and your friends? Doing stuff that would separate you from God, because I struggle with that too. Motocross friends, it's whatever you put before God becomes our God, because it's God or nothing. Of course, we are going to make mistakes and stumble and make bad decisions, and by no means is this okay. But who will you turn to when you mess up? Because yeah, we have a choice. It's called free will.
Amen.
Elijah said to the people, Elijah went before the people and said, "How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him." When we're waiting on God, will you turn to what everybody else is doing, like with the 450, or will you turn to God? Because I think it's a lot better to stand with God and then to be judged by the world than to stand with the world and be judged by God. Because yes, I was made fun of, but it was so worth it for having a Bible study. So Elijah and the prophets went to Mount Carmel. And so the prophets of Baal cut up their sacrifice. It says that they prepared, so I imagine they got some sticks and whatever and whatnot and put the bull on top of it and shouted and screamed for Baal to send fire to light it, but there was no answer. And then so these people, like they were doing their dances, they were doing these customs because they made all these things and all these rules to praise their false god. So Elijah did what every man of God would do. He taunted them. He said, "Shout louder, maybe he is sleeping or traveling." So they did shout and scream. And through it all, there was no answer. And from morning till noon, they did, but still no answer. Then Elijah had rebuilt an altar to place the bull upon the sacrifice, the altar for God. So back to the stories about the Bible study. See, God wasn't just calling me to a Bible study, but he was calling me to make an altar. A place where I had to put all my trust in him, even if when everybody else was looking at me, because it was a place where everybody here could know and meet Jesus. And I didn't really understand what was going to happen. If anyone was going to come, if my friends would still accept me, if my family would accept me, I didn't know. But I was following what God had called me to do because I still had to trust God to not lean upon my own understanding, but to lean on his. 33 through 35 says, "He arranged the wood, cut the bull into pieces, and laid it on the wood. Then he said, 'Fill 4 large jars of water and pour it on the offering and the wood.' 'Do it again,' he said. They did it again. 'Do it a 3rd time,' he ordered, and they did it the 3rd time. The water ran down and around the altar and even filled the trenches." So, if you haven't picked this up, all these prophets and Elijah, they're waiting for their God to send fire. And like, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I don't think fire and water mix very well. Just saying. But Elijah poured 3 large jars. And I'm not talking about like little Happy Meal cup full of water just put it on the sacrifice. I'm talking large jars of water upon the altar where God was supposed to send fire. And I like this a lot because whatever mistakes, sins, bad decisions we made in our lives, God will send fire on those things and are gone and forgotten by God. So let me ask you something today. What sacrifice or mistake or sin do you need to place on the altar so God can get rid of it? And I'm not saying you won't be tempted or anything to do it, but to have the peace of mind so that when that sin and temptation does come, you can cast it on the fire that God is building and to let God deal with it. So I want to tell you guys a story that happened today, actually. So last night my friend texted me, he owns King's Landing, and I know all those people there, and they're like, the news is coming and we need people to come out to show like they're making like a commercial for Fox 35 News, pretty much. So I was like, all right, I'll go. So I went, and me and my friend were like sitting around and we're waiting for the news guy to get ready and stuff like that. And then so like we were doing the rope swing and stuff, and he looks at the rope swing, and it's probably like 30 to 35 feet, and that's like higher than the roof, a lot higher than the roof. And then he was like, someone climbed the rope all the way to the top of the very tallest limb. So imagine like the tallest rope climb you can think of, and the dude climbed to the top and swung from it and jumped. He was telling me about the story. And so he looks at me, and he tells me the worst thing anybody else can tell me. I bet you can't do it. So I did what every godly man would do. I jumped in the water, so I started climbing the rope. So I got like 20 feet up. I was like halfway up, and I looked down, I was like, crap, I'm really high. Well, I can't stop now, I gotta keep going. So I kept climbing, I kept climbing. And if you think, so the limb's like right here, and the rope comes straight down. So I'm all the way at the top, and I'm hanging. So I'm hanging about 30 feet up in the air. And I'm like, I should have thought this one through a little bit, because if I drop, I'm gonna land on the rope, probably get twisted in it, and probably die. That's what I'm thinking. I'm at this point. And I'm just saying, like, I was pretty scared. I'm up there looking like a freaking chicken trying to fly or something. I don't even know, trying to kick the rope out of my way or something. And then these people are coming like, get the rope, blah, 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 blah. And I'm sitting there hanging. And I'm stuck. To finish the story later, but that's funny. So that's funny and all, but how many of us are just hanging and we feel stuck in a situation that we can't get out of? Like, we're waiting on God to do something, but we're frustrated. But we see that in this waiting process, what Elijah did. He prayed. Verse 36. At the time of sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again. So I imagine that Elijah believed that God was going to send fire. And we do believe that God is going to change our lives. But I guarantee he didn't know how long he was going to have to pray for. Or if it would happen today or tomorrow. All he knew he was calling for fire. But Elijah did the only thing he knew how to do, and the only thing that God tells us to do. Surrender. Verse 38 says, "Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, for the wood and the stones and the soil were all licked up, and the water in the trench." So God answered. God answered Elijah's prayer. Fire fell from the sky and lit the sacrifice on fire. And I don't know your dreams or the situation you're in right now, but you might feel like you're stuck and dangling from a tree, and I don't know what way you're trying to turn. You may feel like people are pouring water on your fire, but I do not know this. But I do know this. If you trust God and pray and obey what he has called you to do, and not worry about the 450, but cast your cares upon the one, he will send fire. But we have to do the only thing that we can do. Trust and surrender. The only thing he's calling us to do. Because, see these shirts, the shirts. See, this was the altar that God was calling me to build. Even though when I felt like it wasn't going to work, or worried about what people would think of me, because when I trusted God, he sent fire. Because you guys, you're the fire. You're the thing that God promised. He used me to lead people to Christ, and I'm not saying this to brag, because God looks at the heart, but I'm saying this to be a leader, to show you guys, if you trust God, and it might seem like the place where you're going to be is not where you want to be, but if you trust in God, he will get you to the place where he wants you to be. And another place in the Bible it says, Jesus looked at them and said, "With man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible."
Amen.
We're done.
All right, hold on.